Good day everyone, we are Group 6. Today we will discuss the topic learners with difficulty remembering and focusing. In this topic, we will learn about students who find it difficult to remember lessons, concepts, and even instructions, as well as those who find it a challenge to sustain their focus. Let's begin. The International Classification of Functioning, Disability, and Health of the World Health Organization 2001 provides definitions of specific mental functions and focusing. Memory functions include short-term memory, long-term memory, and retrieval, while attention functions include sustaining, shifting, dividing, and sharing attention. Soundtrack 2011 also provides a description of each of these functions. So you'll see that in the next slide. Understanding these concepts is necessary to have a clearer picture of how to enable learners with such difficulties to succeed and how to provide support in an inclusive setting. Definition of memory and attention functions. So memory functions involves encoding, storage, and retrieval of information over time. Memory functions include short-term memory, mental resources that allow for storing information temporarily for only 30 seconds, after which is lost if strategies are not used to integrate them into long-term memory. So, ang short-term memory, ma-store na ang specific na information temporarily, approximately 30 seconds. Dili na siya mo stay sa imong memory if wala kay buhaton para maadto na siya sa imong long-term memory. For example, remembering a 7-digit landline number for a moment to be able to write it down. So, after 30 seconds, mawala na siya sa imong huna-huna, or if maka-remember ka, siguro mga dili na siya complete nga 7 ka digits. Pero, ug na kay buhaton or na kay strategy like imong i-memorize, imong i-sultig balik-balik. 7, 1, 2, then, maadto na siya sa imong long-term memory. But if wala, siya, approximately 30 seconds, mawala. And another is long-term memory. Mental resources that allow for storing information for a long period of time. So, siya ang opposite. Mas-stay or mas-stored ang information for longer period. For example, recollection of an important day in a distant past, like graduation, you attended a wedding, or it can also include skills that you learned. And lastly, we have retrieval. Mental resources used to recall information stored in long-term memory. For example, you would use recall for an essay test, so you can further expound your idea. Let's say you have the topic cyberbullying, and you have there an idea of what is cyberbullying in your long-term memory. So you would recall that and use that information to expound your idea. That is retrieval. And next is attention functions. Involves focusing of mental resources on a stimulus for a required time period. And it includes sustained attention. Mental resources used to maintain attention for an extended period. It is also called vigilance. For example, is staying focused while reading a chapter in a classical novel without any interruption until you've finished. So, nasustain ang imong attention. No interruptions until you finished. Because you maintained your attention. And that's sustained attention. We have selective attention. Mental resources that allow for focusing on a specific stimulus that is important while ignoring others. So, murag imong gi-filter ang important lang and i-ignore na ng dili important. Example, focusing on the voice of a teacher amidst the noise of a group, used to refocus concentration from one stimulus to another. So, for you, ang lecturer or ang teacher kay important man, so you choose to focus your attention to his or her voice and dili sa noise sa imong palibot. And dividing attention. Mental resources that involves focusing on or more activities or tasks simultaneously. Let's say you're listening to the music while cooking. So, minaw ka sa music, sabay ka sa lyrics, nagkanta ka, nagtimpla ka, na-divide ang imong attention. Kay, mura ka ga-multitask. And that's what we call dividing attention. And you do it without problems. Students with learning disability and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are characterized by having difficulties with memory and attention functions. So, if we know someone nga with difficulty or kanang nagpakita ani nga mga signs na siya difficulty or problema sa memory or attention function, most likely naa na sila LD or ADHD. So, the subsequent slides will present the definition, identification, and learning characteristics for each disability. But first, let's talk about learning disability. It was Samuel Kirk who coined the term learning disability in 1962 when he met with parents and families as they discussed about students who encountered pronounced difficulties in school despite having average to above average intelligence. He further described students with learning disabilities as a heterogeneous mix of learners who all had neurologically based problems that affected their learning in different ways. So, as he mentioned, children with learning disabilities are a heterogeneous group. So these children are a diverse group of individuals exhibiting potential difficulties in many different areas. So for us to better understand learning disabilities, here's Gargaloo, who provided common components on the definitions of a learning disability. So, intellectual functioning within normal range, and significant gap or discrepancy between a student's assumed potential and actual achievement. Generally speaking, people with learning disabilities are of average or above average intelligence. There often appears to be a gap between the individual's potential and actual achievement. So this is why the reason learning disabilities are also referred to as hidden disabilities, because the person looks perfectly normal and seems to be a very bright or intelligent person, yet may be unable to demonstrate the skill level expected of him or expected from someone of a similar age. Makaingon ta nga normal ra siya kay very bright and normal with a normal range ang iyang intelligence. Walay problema sa iyang pero ma-identify na siya once makita na dyan nimo ang iyang actual nga performance or iyang actual nga achievement. inference that LD is not primarily caused by other disabilities or extrinsic factors. So, according to him, learning disability is not caused by external factors. So, wala nakapekto mga external factors sa bata with learning disability. Because learning disabilities are due to genetic or neurological factors that alter the brain functioning in a manner which affects one or more cognitive processes related to learning. Next is difficulty in learning in one or more academic areas. So, as mentioned, basta brain na gani ang kanang issue, expected na jud na nga more cognitive processes nga related to learning ang maapektuhan. Like, learning basic skills such as reading, writing, or doing math. Up next, presumption of CNS or central nervous system dysfunction. So, it is a broad category of conditions in which the brain does not function as it should. So, if the brain is concerned, many areas are greatly affected. So, those components nga akong na-mentioned are also found in the definition provided by the National Joint Commission on Learning Disabilities in 1990. According to them, learning disabilities is a general term that refers to a heterogeneous group of disorders manifested by significant difficulties in the acquisition and use of listening, speaking, reading, writing, reasoning, or mathematical abilities. These disorders are intrinsic to the individual, presumed to be due to central nervous system dysfunction, and may occur across the lifespan. Problems in self-regulatory behaviors, social perception, and social interaction may exist with learning disabilities, but do not by themselves constitute a learning disability. Although learning disabilities may occur concomitantly with other disabilities, for example, sensory impairment, intellectual disabilities, emotional disturbance, or with extrinsic influences such as cultural or linguistic differences, insufficient or inappropriate instruction. They are not the result of those conditions or influences. I will not further explain this one because it's related to the components according to Gargilu. Let's move on. The term learning disability is differentiated from specific learning disability because learning disability focuses on difficulties in one or more basic psychological processes involved in understanding or in using language, spoken or written, which may manifest as difficulties in the ability to listen, think, spark, read, write, spell, or do mathematical calculations. That's according to Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 1997 in Halahan 2014. If ang learning disability focuses on difficulties in one or more basic psychological processes, ang specific learning disability, nag-focus siya sa difficulty with particular aspects, so specific aspects of learning. Thus, we can say the term learning disability is a general term under which other difficulties are subsumed. So there are different types of specific learning disabilities for each type of difficulty, namely dyslexia. So dyslexia for difficulties with reading, spelling, and oral reading fluency. Dyscalculia for difficulties in math computation, problem solving, and analysis. And dysgraphia for difficulties with handwriting and written expression. So this is further explained in table 6.8. First type, dyslexia, and its definition. characterized by difficulties with accurate and or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and word reading abilities that result from a deficit in phonological processing abilities. The difficulties are often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities and the provision of effective classroom instruction, according to IDA 2002. Limited vocabulary and background knowledge, as well as problems in reading comprehension, may result as secondary consequences, according to Shaywitz 2003. So dyslexia is a specific learning disability that affects reading and related language-based processing skills. So a very good example of it is the movie where the character Ishan has difficulty reading because para niya naglupad-lupad daw ang mga letters, nagka-jumbled ang mga numbers, nagkabali-bali. So that's dyslexia. And dyscalculia, a specific learning disability that affects how students acquire and develop their arithmetic skills despite average intelligence, according to Shayliv 2011, and may manifest as difficulty in retrieval of math facts, in understanding number concepts, or using symbols or functions. So, a specific learning disability that affects the person's ability to understand numbers or learn math facts. That's dyscalculia. Lastly, we have dysgraphia, a specific learning disability that affects the development of writing abilities, which may display as spelling, handwriting, and expressive writing difficulties resulting from problems in organizing and putting thoughts into paper. So, again, let's recall, dyslexia is specific learning disability that affects reading and related language-based processing skills, whereas ang dyscalculia, a specific learning disability that affects a person's ability to understand numbers and learn math facts. And lastly, see dysgraphia, a specific learning disability that affects the development of writing abilities. So, that will be the end of my report. This is Brenda Purin, and I'm giving the virtual floor to Miss Chris Charlene Pojas.
So our topic for this day is Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or ADHD. So ADHD, DSM-5, or American Psychiatric Association 2013, provides the diagnostic criteria for ADHD, which include inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, and a combination of the two. So when we say inattention, so it is a person who has a difficulty staying on a task, sustaining focus, and staying organized. And these problems are not due to defiance or lack of comprehension. So next up, we have here hyperactivity. So when we say hyperactivity, higher than usual levels of movement and activity, such as the excessive talking or fidgeting. So it is typically associated with attention deficit disorder, of course, and also impulsivity. So when we say impulsivity, it is doing things or tending to do things suddenly and without careful thought, or it's either a combination of the two. So that is the ADHD according to the American Psychiatric Association 2013. So for a child to be diagnosed with ADHD, the observed behaviors should meet the following criteria. First off, display a persistent pattern for at least 6 months that significantly interferes with functioning or development. Second, observe in 2 or more settings. So it can be home as a setting, or it can be school. So next is several of the symptoms were present before the age of 12 years. And then the behaviors are not resulting from other disorders. So such disorders is anxiety disorder. So it does not result in that kind of disorder. So let us proceed to the signs of ADHD. So let us focus on inattention. So first one, does not pay attention to details and works in haphazard manner, resulting in careless mistakes. So when we say haphazard manner, it is characterized by lack of order or planning. So second, finds it difficult to sustain attention in tasks. Okay, since that we are focusing in attention, so it is expected that the child here finds difficult in giving attention towards his or her task, and then easily distracted and selected by extraneous stimuli. So, what is extraneous stimuli? So, extraneous stimuli here is an action or thought stemming from outside someone's focus and has no relevance to the person's current task. So, a child here is easily got distracted. Okay, so that's the reason why he or she being not attentive. Next, often does not follow through on instruction and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, or duties in the workplace. So it is very comprehensible. And next, appears not to listen or be distracted when spoken to directly. So same as the first one, easily distracted or intentionally appears not to listen. And next we have here has difficulty following instructions, resulting in unfinished work. So a child here has the difficulty. So it's like that, it seems like the child here is suffering or struggling to understand the instruction itself. That's why that he has unfinished work. So next, shows a tendency to be forgetful in daily tasks and routines. So another sign is being forgetful. So in doing tasks or even routines. So next, has problem in organizing tasks and activities. So the child might not be um, organized or don't know how to manage his or her tasks and activities. And next, tends to lose things that are needed for schoolwork and other activities. So this is one of um, the things that why a child is being forgetful, because he or she tends to lose things that are needed for schoolwork and other activities. So that's the effect of being forgetful. So let us now proceed to the signs of ADHD, focusing on the hyperactivity and impulsivity. So first one, often releases and fidgety and cannot seem to stay still while sitting down. So what is fidgety? So fidgety is making unnecessary fuss. So a child here is cannot seem to stay still while sitting down. So cannot focus on sitting himself. Diba? And often stands from seat to roam around the room. So in vernacular term, a child here is considered as puwag lubot because dili siya ka mo stay sa iyang gilingkuran. Magsige siya balin-balin. And then, often runs around or climbs in situations when sitting is required. So, when sitting is required, instead of sitting, the child here often runs or climbs. And next up, often rather talkative, interrupts in conversations and blurts responses. So, also, It is, in short, the child here is naughty. Is quite naughty. Since we are highlighting here the activity expectedly, that the child here is full of energy to move, to talk, and even interrupting conversations and blurred responses. When we say blurred responses, is that it's like a um, sudden response without even, it's out of excitement or nervous. And let's proceed to the next one. Finds it difficult to wait for one's turn in tasks and activities. Next, impulsive with words and actions. Next, may struggle in following instructions and rushes through tasks. So, always in a rush. The same with the first one, which is the inattention. The child here is struggling in following instructions, but the difference is that the child here in a hyperactivity and impulsivity do the things rush or rushes through tasks. So that's it. So now let us move on to the identification. So what's this identification? So identifying students with LD and ADHD begins with the parents and teachers. The presence of difficulties in mental functions, as well as meeting the provided criteria for persistence and consistency in more than one setting, may create the impetus for parents to consult specialists and for teachers to apply pre-referral strategies before referring the student for special education testing. So what do we mean by impetus? So when we say impetus, it is a force that causes something, such as process or activity, to be done or to become more active. So the parents of the child here may tend to create the impetus to consult specialists for their child or children. And pre-referral strategies. So what is pre-referral strategies? Okay, pre-referral strategies is, it's a word together to identify a child's learning strengths and needs. So it puts strategies into action and evaluate the impact of the intervention so the child can succeed in the general education classroom. And now let us move on to the LD. So to identify the LD, children with LD oftentimes display average to above average intelligence but perform below their grade placement in achievement tests of reading, spelling, math, and written expression. So when we say above average intelligence, so according to research, it shows that the signs of intelligence are usually good memory and thinking ability, good attitude, and hardworking nature, general and tacit knowledge, language proficiency and reasoning, decision making, trust, creativity, achievements, good intuition, and problem solving. But in specifying um, above average intelligence, a child may include quick learning, interest in unique topics, and the ability to process information fast, among others. So, it's high, diba? Kumbaga, in short, fast learner. And let's move on to the ADHD. There are four components actually that are needed to identify the students who has ADHD. So first one, we have here medical examination. Second, clinic interview. Next, use of teacher and parent rating scales. And behavioral observation, the last one. So first, medical examination are needed to rule out the presence of sensory impairment or middle ear infection that can cause hearing problems. So it is very important to examine the middle ear or our auditory senses because um, it is part of our learning. It is part of how do we able to remember the words or the utterances. So we cannot stick to one, or we cannot stick to the eyesight alone for us to remember not only the scene, but in order for us to completely um, remember the scenario, the words, the noise, the background that we tend to hear are also important. Okay, so in order for us to remember clearly, we also have to hear the exact scenario. Okay, so that's why um, we have to examine the middle ear or any sensory impairment, specifically the hearing problems. So let's proceed to clinical interview. So of course, the parents provides the specialist with a holistic perspective of the child and essential information about a student's physical and psychological characteristics, family and cultural background, and peer relationships. So when we say holistic perspective, we don't have to focus only in the one like um, physical or psychological characteristics, um, physical, social. We should also consider the emotional, mental, and most importantly, the spiritual well-being of the child. So next, we have here the teacher and parent rating scales. So it is or are used as additional tools to provide evidence of the student's inattention, hyperactivity, and or combination of the two standardized rating scales such as the corner rating scales. So these rating scales from the word or self rating scales, it's a tools to provide evidence, of course, in order for the parents will know if his if their child has ADHD. Okay. Next, corner rating scales, in connected with the teacher and parent rating scales, are used by clinical psychologists and special education diagnosticians to identify the presence of ADHD in a student. So basically, corner rating scales are used by the professionals for them to identify the student who has ADHD. And lastly, behavioral observations. It refers to the daily observations of the students in their respective settings, like home, school, or workplace. So that's all for my report. This is Christian Rojas, and have a good day.
So, good day everyone. I am Little Angela A. Simakin, and I was tasked to tackle about learning characteristics. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, what is learning characteristics? So, learning characteristics oftentimes refer to the difficulties and challenges experienced by students with LD and ADHD, according to Armstrong in 2012. So, these are somehow the traits that determine a child's inability to learn. So, students with LD are known to have challenges in language, literacy, and memory, according to Kurt et al. In 2015, as well as in math, writing, and focusing or attending skills. Nonetheless, it is important to note that these are merely general characteristics, as there are individual differences in terms of abilities and difficulties among children with LD and ADHD. So in our previous lesson, we already talked about some common disorders or disabilities such as the global developmental delay, the mental retardation, and katong Down syndrome, to name a few, naapod to ang mga common learning disabilities or LD. So there are different types of learning disability which can be mild, moderate, severe, or profound. So are you familiar with dyslexia? So this refers to the difficulty with reading. Dyspraxia, the difficulty in terms of fine motor skills. Dyscalculia, I don't know how to pronounce it. It refers to the difficulty with math. Dysgraphia, the difficulty with writing. Dysphasia, the difficulty with language, and etc. So these are the common types of LD. So we can really say that LD is somewhat vague. And it can also be associated with ADHD. So here's why. So according to our previous topic pod, ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. So it refers to the persistent pattern of problems in the areas of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, which cause an individual to struggle in acquiring information. So, if kita no, bisan gani, pila ra ka segundo or even minuto, wa ta ka paminaw sa discussion sa teacher, di na ta makasabot. How much more for those individual who happen to have an ADHD? So, they cannot focus sa ilang task or even ang pagpaminaw sa teacher is an arduous task for them because they are easily get distracted sa mga butang. So people with severe learning disability or the profound and multiple learning disability or PMLD will need more care and support with areas such as mobility, personal care, and communication. People with a moderate learning disability may also need support in these areas but not definitely. So lahi-lahi man jud ang degree sa seriousness or the classification sa mga disabilities or disorders no, which will be determined right after diagnosis. So naay uban nga mild lang nga pwede ra sila i-full mainstreaming and naa sad uban nga partial lang ma-appeal sa regular classes. So in language development, they often display delays in learning how to speak, have difficulties in naming objects and retrieving words from memory, and have limited vocabulary in comparison to typical developing peers. So based on my research, this individual difficulty with word finding or naming items is referred to a mild form of anomic aphasia. So unsa man ang anomic aphasia? So this refers to the difficulty with word finding or naming items, as what I've said earlier. So this anomic aphasia is typically caused by damage to the left hemisphere of our brain, or the control center for speech and language. So in some rare cases, anomia aphasia can be caused by damage to the right hemisphere of the brain. So if we are going to recall our lesson sa una sa science, the human brain anatomy. So our left hemisphere or side of the brain is responsible for language and speech, and the right hemisphere, our right hemisphere plays a large part in interpreting visual information and spatial processing. So now if madaot na sila, in most cases you will really have a difficulty in learning. It will really have a complication. So students with LD oftentimes struggle with having to organize their thoughts, that they are unable to use precise words to express their ideas. On the other hand, there are also students with LD who are better at oral expression in relation to their reading and writing skills. Such students are better at expressing themselves at times rather fluently, but are unable to transfer their thoughts to writing. So mauna ni ang giingon ganina nga there are individual differences in terms of abilities and difficulties among children with LD and ADHD. Naay uban na they're really good when it comes to public speaking or oral reading, but they have difficulty in terms of writing. Naay uban nga they have dyslexia or the difficulty with reading, but they are really good in arts. They really have excellent spatial processing. So next, in terms of reading skills, students with dyslexia display delays and difficulties in phonological processing or word reading or decoding, spelling, and or oral reading fluency. So we all know that fundamental to reading is phonological awareness, or the knowledge that all words can be segmented into phonemes or sounds. So sa itong phonemes, it is a unit based ni sa atong previous topic sa atong speech and arts. No, phonemes is the unit of sound that makes a difference of their meaning. So and the letters in written word corresponds to this sound. So individuals with dyslexia, or with those individuals who have difficulty with reading, have poor phonological awareness that subsequently impedes word reading ability, fluency, and accuracy. So why? Mulihis na po ko sa topic ha, adto sa tas anatomy sa atong brain. So, the brain of dyslexic, I don't know how to pronounce it, dyslexic individual has less activation sa ilang left parietal temporal lobe. Sa manang left parietal temporal lobe, it involved in word analysis and decoding, as well as mapping letters and words into corresponding sounds. So may explain pa ko further ha. So ang brain for those individuals who have dyslexia, there kanang less ilahang gray matter to help with transfer of information of language or phonological processing. So unsa man ang gray matter? So gray matter, it is a part of our brain na nag-involve siya with phonological awareness. So I don't want to explain further about phonological awareness because we've already tackled this ato ang lesson sa Introduction to Linguistics pag first year na to. Next, those individuals who have dyslexia have less white matter which disrupts communication of information. So unsa man po ng white matter? White matter helps the nerves transfer information so that the brain regions can communicate effectively, which is needed for reading. Mao na ang kay less man ang ilang white matter, so those individuals with dyslexia, like they will really struggle when it comes to reading. And lastly, those individuals with dyslexia have anomalies in the size of the corpus callosum. So what is corpus callosum? Corpus callosum is the communication bridge between the cerebral hemispheres. So maora to akong mga na-search. So these basic weaknesses then block access to higher order language processes and gaining meaning from text. Thus, tungod ani nga mga weaknesses, problems with comprehension may be attributed to inaccurate decoding and lack of oral reading fluency, but they can use higher level skills of vocabulary, reasoning, problem solving, concept information, and general intelligence, according to Shywitz in 2003. So, just like the movie Every Child is Special, no? Kaibaw mo ani kay mo ni atong first activity. So we are tasked to watch Every Child is Special, and gipagama ta ni Ma'am adtog reflection or reaction paper ba to? Kalimot ko. So ang centerpiece ato nga movie is Ishan. So he is zealous diba about the craft, but no one has ever noticed that because of his ailment, which causes him to be habitually teased and punished in school for not being able to meet people expectations. So mauto when Ishan diba na get into more trouble siya than his parents can handle, so he was sent to a boarding school to be reprimanded. So at his new school, nothing has really changed, and Ishan must deal with the additional trauma. So even his parents do not comprehend why Ishan chose to distance himself from everyone around him. Not until niabot tuwa ang iyahang teacher. And kato yung teacher, he was really curious about Ishan nga nang dili siya active sa school. He's not that participative, di po siya makipag-communicate or even collaborate with his peers. And maotonistic siya, and he had seen potential kang Ishan. Maotonistic further siya regarding kang Ishan. So he went to Ishan's house sa iyang parents, yeah. And motad to iyang nakitaan ang notebook ni Ishan na adto ang mga nagkabaliktad nga mga letters sa words, and moto he found out that Ishan has dyslexia. So even though naay dyslexia si Ijan, we can also perceive in the movie nga he's really good in painting, in drawing, ug even ka ng mga pag-assemble og mga butang to make an innovation, right? So mao to mo ning giingon anhi, it is somewhat a form of compensation. So I have here a table. So it is a sample oral reading and spelling of a student with dyslexia. So in the original text, it is written here na a man got out of the car. He had a pretty box under his arm. A little girl ran from the house to meet the man. "Hello, father," she said. "Do you have a surprise for me?" Father said, "I have something for a good girl." The girl laughed. "I am very good." So mo na siyang original text, but for those individuals, this is just a sample, no? So for the student with dyslexia, ang iyang oral reading will goes like this. In a man got out of the car. He had a pet on his arm. A little girl ran from the house to meet him. "Hello, father," she said. Father said, "I have some. Do you have a sharp for me?" "Thing for you got, girl." The girl let her. "I have give good." So what have you noticed? Diba ang iyahang oral reading kay mga like disorganized ang mga words. And we also have here mga words nga ang yaog ang student with dyslexia ang iyang spelling sa each word. So we have here will, mahimong ang iyang spelling kay well. Arm, iyang spelling arm. Dress, mahimong breast. Train, mahimong tran. Shout, mahimong shout. Watch, mahimong watch. And grown, mahimong gum. So based on this sample, no, students with dyslexia don't really have a phonological awareness, and ang ilahang they don't have any phonological awareness. Mali ang equivalent sa each word if ilang i-spell. So next, in terms of written language, students with LD have tendencies to reverse letters or words, have poor spelling skills, and display difficulties in the quality, organization, sentence fluency, and application of writing conventions, including handwriting, spelling, and grammar, as well as motivation to write, according to Graham in 2017. So, students with LD, so makita po nato no, so every child is special. Asian doesn't have any motivation to write, and when it comes to like academics na, no, I mean literacy na, when it comes to literacy, dili kaayo active si Asian because he doesn't know how to. Wa siya kahibaon sa iyang gamiton nga learning approach. And he also says there nga the letters are dancing, mo na ang maglibog siya unsaon pagbasa sa mga words. Next, in terms of as for math skills, the difficulties manifest in relation to students' age and grade, according to Shaliv in 2004. For instance, students in the first grade level have problems in the retrieval of basic math facts and in computing exercises, while older children display severe difficulties in learning the multiplication table and understanding algorithms of the four basic operations: the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and the division. So for those who have difficulty in when it comes to math, no, They are known to have incomplete or inadequate procedural knowledge of algorithms, which are reflected in the way they misuse or substitute arithmetic sign, forgetting to regroup, misplacing digits, not following the proper alignment of digits when solving, or solving from left to right. So as a result, students with LD struggle with more complex math equations and problems as they lack the foundational arithmetic skills. And this is perhaps due to the less activation of their parietal lobes. So, unsa gay ng parietal lobes, so balik na punta sa human brain anatomy. So, left and parietal lobe controls the sensory perception, katong links spoken and written language to memory. It gives meaning to what we hear and read, and it affects math and spelling. So for those individuals nga na ay dyscalculia about unsa na pag pronounce dyscalculia, perhaps na ay problem or less ang activation sa ilahang parietal lobe. Next, students with LD also display problems with short-term and working memory. So deficits in metacognition display attention problems and hyperactivity. As a result, they often have trouble focusing on tasks, exhibit excess movement, restlessness, and fidgety behaviors that are characteristics of students with ADHD. So because of these difficulties in executive functioning, students with LD and ADHD are known to be forgetful of daily activities and routines. They can be organized with their personal belongings and even schedules and have problems monitoring comprehension. Moreover, due to their impulsivity, students with ADHD exhibit academic underachievement as well as disruptive behavior that impact in family and peer relationships, according to Dupol, Affid, Stoner in 2003. And cited in Dupol et al. In 2012. So lastly, anchoring on neurodiversity, students with LD and ADHD also have their strengths and abilities amid such difficulties and limitations. Students with LD are known to have strong artistic abilities and visual spatial skills. As a result, they often display unusual skills in drawing. Makita ato ka siya, no? Na siya dyslexia pero anad ka siya mo-draw. Doing mechanical puzzles, makita sa adto nga katong nagama siya og toy boat but using pencil and wood, as well as in building models. Moreover, they are known to be creative, divergent thinkers, imaginative, and highly curious. So, in relation to this, according to Shai-Witz in 2003, he presented a sea of strength model of dyslexia, where weakness in decoding is compensated through other strengths such as reasoning, concept formation, comprehension, general knowledge, problem solving, vocabulary, critical thinking, and reasoning abilities. So this is the reason why students with dyslexia are oftentimes active in class recitations and projects but struggle with literacy tasks that involve reading and writing stemming from their phonological deficits. So naapo ko nabasahan online, guys, that there is more activation in the less efficient right hemisphere for those people nga naay dyslexia. So unsa ganito ang function sa right hemisphere nato? So it is responsible sa ato ang visual interpretation and spatial processing. Mao na ang di na ta maningala why those individuals who have dyslexia kay very very creative, imaginative, and divergent thinkers. So, as you can see, no, it can really be difficult for us to diagnose a mild learning disability as the individual parehan ni siya. He really mixed well with others and he was able to cope with most everyday tasks. However, wata naka-realize that they may need support in other areas of their lives. So thus, for us, educators, Knowing that students come to school with different backgrounds, sets of experiences, cultural context, and worldviews is so essential. So in order for us to avoid biases, which can really hinder students and teachers from developing a positive rapport and a supportive environment during formal instruction, it is vital for us really to comprehend the diversity of our learners. We really need to be cognizant now of what our learners are already capable of in order for us to assist them build on their strengths and also address any weaknesses that might be keeping them from developing, while also ensuring that every learner has the opportunity to engage and flourish without feeling intimidated or uneasy. So realizing that we assisted our students in succeeding in life is quite the greatest source of satisfaction. So it is good to know that we can really be a great tool for a child's success if we really take time to look into. So once again, I am Little Angela A. Simakan, and now I will be giving the floor to the next reporter. Bye.
So now let us move on to the general educational adaptations. So this includes the UDL. But first let us know what UDL is. So UDL, or the Universal Design for Learning, is a teaching approach that works to accommodate the needs and abilities of all learners and eliminates unnecessary hurdles in the learning process. So this means developing a flexible learning environment in which information is presented in multiple ways. So students engage in learning in a variety of ways, and students are provided options when demonstrating their learning. So there are UDL principles that helps teacher to effectively represent, to effectively express and engage their students in their classroom. So we have here the multiple means of representation, expression, and engagement. The use of these universal design for learning principles, such as providing means of representation, expression, and engagement, are effective for all types of learners and provide a level playing field for students with LD, LSD, and ADHD. Through a variety of approaches, students with difficulty remembering and focusing are given opportunities to compensate for their weaknesses and use their strength to learn as much as their typically developing peers. So first principle is the multiple means of representation. So in this principle, we will ask ourselves as teachers or as future teachers, how can I present information in ways that reach all learners? So here are examples. So first example, we have audio books alongside real books. So if you have students with difficulty remembering and focusing, you can integrate these audio books for them to really retain the topics that you have presented. And then we also have multimedia presentations and videos to supplement textbooks. So this example is very prevalent in today's generation, or in today's setting, because in the classroom we are engaged to different multimedia presentations. Like we can engage to PowerPoints like we used to use in presenting our topics to our students. And then you can also use math manipulative materials and illustrations to reinforce lessons. So illustrations, so it is very kanang understandable ang illustrations, no? Another example we have here, hands-on experiences. So they say students learn more through experiences. So you can talk about real-life experiences in presenting your topics. And then you can also use reading materials that include rich visual representation in the form of photos, graphic organizers, diagrams, and etc. So since your students have difficulty remembering and focusing, so it is vital to include visual representation. So magbutang kag mga photos kanang naa sila makita ba para mas ma-retain or mas mahinumduman nila ang imuhang gi-present nga topic. These are the examples of the first principle, which is the multiple means of representation. So we have first audiobooks alongside real books, multimedia presentations and videos to supplement textbooks, math manipulative materials and illustrations to reinforce lessons, hands-on experiences, use of multi-sensorial activities in addition to teacher talk, and then we have used reading materials that include rich visual representation in the form of photos, graphic organizers, diagrams, and etc. The second principle is the multiple means of expression. So in this second principle, the concern is how can we offer purposeful options for students to show what they know. So expression. So in addition to traditional measures of assessment, provide variety of ways to demonstrate understanding of concepts or lessons. So we have here first debates. So it is very familiar since we already experience doing debates in our other subjects. So we can integrate this means of expression for our students to really express their thoughts and ideas in the class. And then second one, we have here build models. Experimentation. So you can inculcate experimentation in your topic. And then we have digital audio presentations, writing activities, of course, portfolio assessment, photographs or pictures, and blogs, and also draw pictures or use graphic organizers to illustrate concepts or content. So those are very important for your students to really express their thoughts, their ideas in a certain thing or in a certain topic. Really? Now let's proceed to the third principle. The multiple means of engagement. So in this last principle, the concern is how can I engage all students in my class? So it's all about the engagement. So we can provide varied activities to support student engagement through, first we have hands-on kinesthetic activities. And then we have plays, drama, or dance. So since in a play, in a drama, or in a dance, it requires a group of students to engage themselves. So we can include this method or this means to engage our students. And then we have simulation games, so games para mas awaken ang kanang motivation or engagement sa mga students. So we can use games. And then role playing, it is very familiar. Ibo naman din ang role playing. And then we have discussion and debates again. So para ma-engage ang students, you can use or include or inculcate discussions and debates. And then give opportunity for student choice. Example given, we have range of reading materials and activities. And then we have use inquiry-based learning and project-based approach. So karang naa jay buhatan ang students para ma-engage sila. So in addition to UDL, an approach that has been proven to be effective for students with memory and focusing difficulties is the use of explicit instruction of literacy skills, comprehension, and writing strategies. So when we say explicit instruction, it is the way to teach in a direct and structured way. So such approach uses step-by-step instruction that includes modeling, providing guided practice, as well as independent practice, while giving immediate corrective feedback so students will understand what and how to improve. Part of this approach is the use of think aloud to model concrete steps in problem solving, such as how to attack an unfamiliar word, how to begin a writing task through brainstorming, and how to begin answering a math word problem. So say for instance, students with dyslexia and struggling readers benefit from the direct or explicit approach in phonological processing, phonics instructions, and spelling rules. Because of their reading and spelling difficulties, learning through mere visual approach will not be effective. So they may remember the words now as they process in their short-term memory, but forget by tomorrow because the words were not stored in their long-term memory along with the other accompanying difficulties. So, Go 1993 and Bagpuri Level et al. 2014 demonstrated that explicit instruction in phonemic awareness and phonics was essential to develop a firm understanding of the alphabetic principles. So, explicit instruction. Galushka et al. 2014 conducted another meta-analysis and found that phonics instruction is the most intensively investigated treatment approach and the only one that has been found to be effective and statistically confirmed in improving the reading and spelling performance of children and adolescents with reading difficulties. So when we say phonics instruction, it teaches children the relationships between the letters of written language and the individual sounds of a spoken language. So it teaches children to use these relationships to read and write words. So that's phonics instruction. Planning the classroom environment and how routines are implemented is equally important in an inclusive instruction or in an inclusive classroom. Students with LD and ADHD show a tendency to be restless, become hyperactive, and have short attention spans. Providing a classroom that is highly structured and with clear expectations is essential. So class rules and norms, agreements, routines, as well as schedules need to be written and accompanied by clear and simple images. So kailangan ang mga visuals katong mga illustrations na adjud sila kanang accompany nga kanang pictures or images na makita sa mga students para mas madali nilang masabtan o mas madali nilang ma-retain kung what is it all about. These need to be explained, displayed, and implemented consistently to make the classroom environment structured and safe for all children. So I guess Dani Rakutaman. So this general educational adaptations will be continued by Celeste Sombrio.
Good day everyone, I am Celeste Sombrero and I will be discussing general educational adaptation. By the way, it is just a continuation with Miss Amy Kenlog's report. So let's now proceed to the discussion. According to Mori 2016, One intervention that has been reported to be effective in helping students with ADHD is the use of Daily Report Card or DRC, which is an individualized intervention to manage target behaviors of a child. It begins with an assessment through observation and teacher or parent interviews to determine specific behaviors that need to be managed and or developed in a student. Once identified, the target behaviors are framed positively and teachers monitors the student's progress on the DRC throughout the day by recording whether the targets have been met. A system of reinforcements and consequences is developed with the child. Reinforcements can be in the form of tangible rewards such as stickers, stamps, puzzles, and etc., but they can also be opportunities to do certain activities in school, such as having extra time in the classroom or library, having an extra book to borrow, being the leader of the day, being the teacher's lunch buddy, and other activities. Parents are also included in the planning and implementation to promote homeschool communication and collaboration. In this manner, the generalization of behaviors is targeted to the home setting or vice versa. Reden 2018 stated that a meta-analysis of DRC literature from 2007 to 2017 yielded results that range from weak to strong impact on the academic and social behavior of elementary students who were noted to have disruptive behaviors as well as the ones diagnosed with disabilities. The study found important components that the daily report card should have to make it effective. First is clear and operationalized target behaviors. So, in making a report regarding the progress of the student's behavior, it should have clear objectives for the teacher to know how the student's doing throughout the process and for them to know how to assess the student's behavior. Second is provide feedback to the students about his or her behavior. It is also essential to give feedback on how they behave in a class for them to know how to improve their behavior and how they behave in classroom. And third is providing homeschool communication. Whether the child has been diagnosed with a specific learning disorder or is displaying learning difficulties at the school, it is important that parents and teachers keep the lines of communication open to ensure the best outcomes for each student. Good communication is the responsibility of both parents and teachers. And finally, the provision of different types of accommodation in terms of presentation, response, setting, scheduling, and behavior management is beneficial for students with difficulty remembering and focusing. So there are types of accommodation provide support for students with difficulty remembering and focusing. So let's first tackle with presentation. Presentation, by the way, conveys information from a speaker to an audience. Next is response. It is something done as a reaction to something that has been done. Next is setting. It is the time, place, and circumstances in which something occurs or develops. And next is scheduling. Scheduling is the arrangement of an event to take place at a particular time. And lastly, for the behavior management, is about guiding the child's behavior towards appropriate ways of behaving. It is a positive and constructive approach that is the best way to guide the child's behavior. This means giving the child attention when they behave well, rather than punishing the child when they do something you don't like. So during the presentation, the teacher must provide the following. First is audio files to supplement a slide presentation. So using audio file is very helpful as it catches the attention of the students, especially those students who has a short span of attention. Next is bigger font size in reading materials and worksheets. Of course, if your presentation is appealing to the eyes of the students, it would possibly sustain their interest towards the certain discussion. And next is leveled books that match students' reading level. Another one is audiobooks and or have a peer read aloud the selection. So let them read the text for them to be engaged with a discussion and don't just merely discuss the topic. Next is digital text that provides word meanings, advanced organizers to serve as a guide during lectures, preview of vocabulary or key points to provide the big picture, keep an active involvement in class, use graphic organizers and mind mapping techniques for note-taking during class. These are also one of the wise techniques to make the discussion fun and attractive. And lastly, explain and write directions step by step while making sure students is attentive and listening. So the next type of accommodation is response. So the teacher must allow students to use the following. Use text-to-speech software to facilitate writing. Next is use word processor with spelling and grammar check. And another one is waive incorrect spelling in specific subjects and do not mark misspelling as incorrect provided content is accurate. Next is graphic organizers as a pre-writing. And for the math supports, calculation devices such as calculator, abacus, Kipu. Kipu, by the way, is used for tally cords for the Inca civilization of South America and other calculation devices. Next is concrete material and manipulatives. Another one is chart of math facts and formula. Special paper with grids for computation and that's it. And for the setting, another type of accommodation, first is preferential setting. So we must let the students sit away from any distraction to avoid miscommunication and for them to sustain their attention towards the discussion. Next is play appropriate background music through individual earphones while studying. Another one is allow students to move or run around a few times before class or in between classes. So let them rest or move for them to freshen up their minds and for them to avoid boredom. And for the next type of accommodation is scheduling. First, provide extended time. Since the students have diagnosed with ADHD, the activities should have extended time because they have difficulties sustaining their attention with it. Next is break tasks into sections. This will help you avoid stress and procrastination. People who procrastinate often comment that they will wait until the last minute. They feel overwhelmed and the task seems insurmountable. And next is time limits for assignment and countdown. We must allocate a finite time period to the tasks that help you complete them on time. It also helps you to manage your workload in most effective way. And lastly, for the scheduling, allow for quick brain breaks to move around and stretch in between activities. And for the last type of accommodation for the DRC is behavior management. First, teach self-talk skills. Over time, engaging in more positive self-talk can help reduce stress, improve self-esteem, increase motivation, inspire productivity, and improve overall mental and physical health. Next is teach physical relaxation techniques such as mindful breathing. And lastly, allow students to doodle while listening to the lecture. According to Andrade 2010 in Armstrong 2012. And that ends my report. Thank you for listening and God bless us all.